Can you not fly the DJI Avata as well as you'd like? Always crashing it and you just can't get the hang of it. And you're struggling to get that buttery smooth footage that you see all over YouTube. You're not alone, because there's many FPV pilots that really struggle when it comes to nailing manual mode. But don't worry, because in this video I'm going to be showing you the hidden settings inside the DJI Avata that can massively help improve your flying. But more importantly, I'll be explaining exactly what these settings do so you can implement them yourself, and what my own settings are when it comes to flying my own DJI Avata. Now, these settings are only put into use when you're using manual mode and you're using the DJI FPV controller. All FPV drones, specifically the sensitivity of these drones, is dependent on something called rates. And without getting technical, it's all maths, graphs, and equations. And if I was here to teach you all the technical stuff, you'd switch off straight away and I'd probably get it wrong. However, understanding them and how to use them is critical in getting your flying much better and smoother. Unfortunately, I don't own the latest DJI goggles, so I won't be able to share my screen with you. However, I'll do my best to put all my settings up on screen to help you out. So grab your goggles, your controller, and your drone, and let's begin. You need to have all three of these turned on: your drone, your goggles, and your controller. If you press the directional joystick down to bring up the menu, you'll have status, album, transmission, and settings come up. Let's go down to settings and select that, then go to control, then remote controller, and finally go across to gain and Expo. This is where you can dial in them secret settings we were just on about. On the DJI Avata, you've got three options. You've got center sensitivity, max rate, and Expo. All of these can be changed independently for tilt, roll, and yaw. Now, we don't have the option to change this for the throttle, but you don't need to. And if you ever have a drone in the future where you can change these settings for the throttle, just don't. It's a waste of time. It's a really long explanation as to why, but just trust me on this. So let's break these down. First up, we have center sensitivity. This setting controls how sensitive the sticks are around the center. Pretty self-explanatory. The higher the value, the more sensitive it is. The lower the value, the least sensitive it is. And one of the ways to think about it is by implementing a dead zone. If you've ever done any kind of gaming before, a dead zone will allow you to move the sticks a little bit without having major input in the actual game. This is the same kind of thing. If you find your footage to be a little bit sensitive and jittery around the center, decrease out the center sensitivity. We're gonna skip max rate for the time being, but we'll come back to it, don't worry. Let's go straight to Expo or exponential rate. I feel like Expo and center sensitivity go hand in hand together because it affects the way your sticks control the drone, but not just around the center this time. And I'm gonna try my very best to explain it in the best way I possibly can. This is the fourth time I've tried filming this section. Let's make your Expo for the roll axis 0 for the time being. What that's going to do is, if you bring your control stick all the way to the left or to the right and hold it there for an entire second, your drone will do a full 360 in that 1 second. And if you move your control stick only halfway between the center and all the way to the left or to the right and hold it there again for another second, your drone won't go a full turn round. It will actually just flip 180 degrees. And the same thing would happen if you only went a quarter of the way with your stick. Your drone would move 90 degrees within that 1 second. It's all proportional and relative to one another. Make sense? Okay, so now let's increase the Expo value. The amount of control, or in this case, the distance that your drone will rotate within the 1 second, will generally decrease for the first half of the distance from center all the way to the left or all the way to the right. So now maybe you can move your stick halfway between the center and all the way to the right, but instead of your drone flipping a full 180 degrees, it will actually only move maybe 90 degrees. This will generally give you more control when it comes to flying the drone because you can move the control sticks a lot more and your drone won't move anywhere near as much as normal. But the flip side of that, no pun intended whatsoever, is that when you get the control sticks all the way near the edge, you have a lot less control. Everything becomes a lot more sensitive. Expo is just short for exponential, very similar to an exponential curve on a graph. So as you increase your Expo value, you are adding to that exponential curve. And just for a laugh, so you don't have to, I decided to put my Expo to 1, and this was my reaction.
I'll never ever fly a drone like this. It's like driving a really old car where you've got no steering whatsoever, and then you go all the way to the end, and then it moves and takes you into the side of the road, the bush.
It was literally like driving a boat with no rudder. Now let's go back to the second setting, which was max rate. And this is possibly the easiest for you to understand and the most important one to understand. Max rate determines how many degrees your drone will move when you move the control all the way to the edge. For instance, if you set your max rate to be 360, your drone will move 360 degrees in 1 second if you move your stick all the way to the edge for 1 second. If you want it to go around twice in 1 second, then obviously make it 720. Pretty much if you want your drone to spin faster, then increase that value. However, if you want to dial it back a little bit and take it nice and steady, then please do. But this is why FPV rates are so personal. Not one setting fits all. If you ever decide to move away from the DJI Avata and buy a DJI FPV, or maybe even build your own drone, your rates could change quite dramatically. But one of the biggest things that can completely throw off the way you fly, and especially your rates, is actually down to your camera angle. And for anyone asking, anytime I fly my Avata, I normally stick around between 20 and 25 degrees. However, if I want to fly slower, I bring that down to maybe 10. If I want to fly faster, nothing wrong with going all the way up to 45 degrees. Again, it's all down to personal preference. But even though it's down to personal preference, you guys keep asking what my settings are. And I feel like the majority of my settings are a really good starting point for most people. So if you want them, grab a pen and paper and listen up. I have my Expo set to 0.6 for all of the roll, tilt, and yaw. I also have my center sensitivity set to 20, which is one of the lowest sensitivities on the Avata. And that's because I like to have as much control around the center stick as possible, but then I make my max rate really high. My max rate for the tilt and roll is set to 720, and the yaw is set to 400. So why do I have the tilt and roll set to 720 and the yaw set to 400? The way I see it is the tilt and roll is all controlled by my right hand, and a lot of FPV flying is down to muscle memory. So when the distance I have to move my stick from center is the exact same for both the roll and tilt, it makes things a lot easier for my fingers to remember, or my brain. However, the yaw is controlled with my left hand, so why is that not also 720? Anytime you fly an FPV drone and you need to turn it, you don't just use the yaw stick, you use the yaw, the roll, and a little bit of tilt. Most of the time I find myself needing to add more roll than I do yaw when it comes to turning. So therefore when I've got my sticks and I'm moving them, I can almost move them the same distance from center just to make a simple turn. However, none of these figures and values have been calculated using any maths. It's all down to personal preference and feel. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to flying anything like an FPV drone. And a little word of advice from my experience. If you want to take my rates and put them into your own drone, then do so, but change your max rate to be around half. So set it for 200 for the yaw and 360 for the roll and tilt, and see how you get on. I don't want anyone heading down to the comment section below saying I did what you've said and I've crashed my drone and broke it, because I feel really, really guilty. So go steady. And that's the biggest thing. When it comes to flying an FPV drone, it's very, very much down to feel. Get your drone in the air, practice, see how you feel, and if you don't like it, bring it down, change a few settings, and go from there. It's all down to trial and error, but only change one setting at a time. To some of you, I may make flying an FPV drone seem really straightforward, but something for you to remember is I was flying FPV drones maybe about 7 to 8 years ago, and even now I'm a little bit rusty. But if I was to fly your DJI Avata with entirely different rates in comparison to mine, I would probably struggle just as much as what you do. It's like I know the basics, but I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable in flying your drone. So let me know how you get on in the comments below. In the next few weeks, we're going to be going over color grading for the DJI Avata. So if you want to check that out, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. But for now, if you want to improve the overall quality of your flying, then watch this video right here. However, if you want to get back to basics and learn how to nail manual mode, then watch this video right here. I'll see you soon.